Hello, my name is Matthias and welcome to the FPL Scope and the weekly wildcard draft for Game Week 15, where I try to select what I think is the best squad to have in Fantasy Premier League going forward in the next few game weeks. And there's a lot of game weeks now coming up one after another. There's a lot of things happening. It's only been like 2 days since my last wildcard draft, but I'm still going to have a couple changes for you this time around because obviously things have happened. There has been new information from the past game week, and at least the matches that have finished from this past game week. And there's also obviously different matches because some people have had a really easy match and have tougher matches ahead. Some people have had a really tough match and have easier matches ahead. So obviously that's going to change the thinking for the long term and who you want to draft in your team basically. So yeah, once again, I'm going to do it in a type of NBA/NFL style draft where I select 15 players basically. And the number one pick is going to be the player that I think is the best player to have currently in FPL. And that's a pretty easy answer currently. And then the 15th player is going to be the 15th pick, as it were, is going to be the player that I think is the least important part of the squad. But he still made the squad anyways. Or she. No, it's going to be he. But anyways, I'm going to do that. I'm also going to talk about 3 players that were close to making the cut. I'm also going to talk about the players that have dropped out since last time. And that's going to be 4 players, actually, even though my last weekly wildcard draft was 2 days ago. But let's go ahead with the number one pick, who is going to be really, really easy to choose. That's going to be Mo Salah once again. He just keeps blowing away our expectations. This past game week, most people went with Palmer as captain. He managed to get 7 points in a 5-1 win against Southampton. But once again, Salah proved to be the best captaincy choice, even though he played against Newcastle away. And even though Liverpool were down most of the game, and even though he once again had a really poor first half, he just finds a way to get so many points, so many goals, and is just absolutely unstoppable. 18 points against Newcastle. Purely like bonkers stuff. Like he's absolutely crazy this season. Has had his best start to FPL in terms of FPL points so far in his career, and yeah, he just doesn't seem to be stopping either. And he has really good fixtures coming up. He just finished Newcastle away, and then in 4 game weeks he's going to play Leicester at home, which is just an absolutely fantastic fixture. So all these fixtures, Everton, they just conceded 4 goals to Man United. Fulham at home. Fulham have been good in the past, or not too far, like in the recent past, basically. But Liverpool usually score a lot of goals against Fulham. And Spurs, who are really weak defensively in general, and then Leicester at home, which is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, everything is in his favor. He is the best player by far in FPL. I don't really have to talk too much about him, but he's just that good. And I know I've heaped so much praise on Salah throughout the 2 years that I've been making content now, and he deserves every single bit of it. Like, I have been probably too high on Salah as a player probably in the past, but he is making my words come true, at least in terms of him being a top 3 player now, I think all time in Premier League history almost. He's about that level, or at least if he keeps going like this. He is still like 33 years old or 32 years old, and he could stay in the Premier League and be dominant for another 3 years at least, I think. So he's just absolutely fantastic, and yeah, just can't say enough good things about Salah. And he's clearly the number one pick. He's going to be the number one pick, even if he blanks in the next 4 game weeks. He's still going to be the number one pick probably after that, because he's just that good. So yeah, Salah number one, clear number one. He should also be the number one captaincy choice as well to make this more about FPL. He is auto-captain now for the foreseeable future. In all 4 of these game weeks, I'm going to captain Salah. I'm so annoyed at myself for not captaining him this past game week, and especially, game week 11 or whatever, when I captained Palmer again over Salah. Yeah, never again. I'm going to captain Salah every single game week, and I think most people will do that as well. But you just have to do that at this point to keep up, because Salah is just absolutely amazing. There's nothing stopping him this season, not even AFCON, which has been sort of like a detriment to him in the past. But yeah, he's just absolutely amazing. So Salah, number one pick. That's enough about Salah. Let's move on to the next player. Number 2, again, it's going to be Cole Palmer. It's going to be a pretty similar draft, obviously, because it's only been two days since I last made my weekly wildcard draft video for Game Week 14. And the order for the number 1 and number 2 pick, and number 3 for that matter, and number 4 for that matter, is going to be the same. Palmer, he only got 7 points, which is okay. Like 7 points, you'll take that normally. But when it's in a 5-1 win against Southampton, when most of us had him as captain, it's kind of a letdown that happened. But once again, he could have had so many more points. several passes that his teammates just wouldn't finish for him, and he obviously could have had a lot more going for him offensively as well. And the interesting thing about Palmer especially is the fact that Chelsea haven't gotten a single penalty so far, if I'm not mistaken, this season. And that was like the bread and butter of Palmer like a year ago when he first burst onto the scene as an FPL pick. So that has to change at some point. They have to be getting penalties at some point, Chelsea, and we know he's going to convert them as well. So yeah, I think the best is yet to come for Palmer this season, even though he's been really, really good so far. And I think the fixtures are still really good. Spurs away isn't really that tough of a fixture in terms of scoring goals, maybe against the better teams, because Spurs seem to turn it on against the big six sides this season. But even still, that's not the worst game. Brentford at home is a fantastic game. If it wasn't for Salah just being absolutely amazing, I would have easily captained Palmer there. But now I'm going to just pick Salah because I think he's just too good. Everton away, I mean, again, we saw Man United score 4 goals against Everton, and now we saw Everton beat Wolves 4-0. That's kind of the volatility of Premier League, I guess, but Everton's still a decent game for him. And then Fulham at home is also a decent fixture for Palmer, who has long-term fixtures as well, are really, really good. So yeah, he comes in at number 2. I still think he is vital to have in FPL, even though he hasn't been quite as good as we have been hoping for like the past like 6-7 game weeks, but he still had that monster haul 14 points this past game week, in game week 13 as well. So yeah, still a fantastic pick, and I still think the best is yet to come for him with all the penalties and stuff that he's going to get eventually. And at some point, Madueke is going to help him and score some of the chances that he sets up for him, because yeah, that's just super annoying that he doesn't do that. But anyways, Palmer number 2. Number 3, Bukayo Saka. He is still in the team. He is still number 3, but he's not as strong of a number 3 as he was last time around. He obviously blanked against Man United. Didn't really look too involved in play there in that game either. Like, he was sort of didn't really have any big chances and stuff, but he's still a tremendous player. And I think that was also a really tough game for Arsenal, even though they are the best team in the league currently. And that's why Saka is such a high valued pick still. They are just a really good team, but I think Man United are figuring things out now. So they made it kind of difficult for Arsenal, but again, the set pieces was just too much for Man United to bear, and Saka is a huge part of those set pieces as well. So yeah, Saka's still in the team, and still quite solidly in the team as the number 3 pick. But it's not quite as clear as previously, especially once we need more money for the rest of the positions. I felt like this game week, it was kind of tough to make a team. There's several players that I had to cut out because I didn't have enough money for them. So with all that in mind, maybe Saka's potential goes down. Maybe his value goes down eventually. But again, you look at the next 4 fixtures as well. Fulham away is still a tough-ish game. I'm still contemplating whether I should bring him in myself for my own team this week, because Fulham away could be a tough fixture. Depends a bit on what happens with Fulham tonight, as I'm recording this before Fulham play their game week 14 fixture. But then Everton home, Crystal Palace away, Ipswich at home. 3 really, really good matches. So for now, I think Saka is still a tremendous pick, number 3 in this draft. But long term, maybe you want to spend that money elsewhere. But I think he's still obviously a fantastic player who's going to get a lot of points for the rest of the season. So yeah, he comes in at number 3. Speaking of Arsenal and their defense, it's still absolutely amazing. And Gabriel Magalhaes didn't even play last game. And they still kept the clean sheet. They still scored 2 set pieces where we know Gabriel is the best player that they have to score attacking set pieces. He's going to score with his head rather than with his ass, like his partner Saliba did. So yeah, Gabriel is still a fantastic player. He is potentially out for the game against Fulham, but it doesn't really matter that much, because for the next 3 games after that, he's going to be a dead certainty in this team as well. So he still comes in at number 4, even though he was injured and didn't play this past game week. I still think he's a really good valued player. There's another good Arsenal defender that I'm going to talk about as well, pretty soon actually, who also could be in consideration rather than Gabriel, but you could also play 2 Arsenal defenders because their defense is absolutely fantastic. And I think they're going to keep more and more clean sheets as the season goes along. I think this is sort of going to be, it sort of feels like Arsenal could be in position to take over that City spot of being like the team that consistently gets a lot of points. I think it was sort of under talked about last season how consistent Arsenal were to end the season. Most people were focusing on, oh, they bottled it again by not beating City in the league, but they had like 10 games in a row or whatever with wins towards the end of the season there. And I think that is sort of the consistency we can get from Arsenal. And especially defensively, I think they can keep a lot of clean sheets. Gabriel can score a lot of goals. So yeah, I think he's still tremendous value, and he comes in at number 4 for that reason. Number 5, we have Alexander Isak, who's a new player. As you can see, he has a green font on his name. That means that he's new since last time, because he has been a bit up and down lately. Was injured the game before, or got injured in the game before in game week 13 he got injured, but he was back for game week 14 against Liverpool. He managed to score, get an assist, got a lot of points. He looks really good, and the next 3 matches, or 4 matches even, Aston Villa are also a team that conceded a lot of goals lately. The next 4 matches are absolutely brilliant, and also the long-term fixtures are actually really, really good as well for Isak. So I think he is just a really, really high-value player currently. We all had him at the start of the season in Game Week 1. Pretty much all of us had him. And that's because he is one of the best strikers, if not the best striker in the league. He's pretty close, actually, in my opinion, compared to Haaland. But yeah, he's one of the best strikers in the league. He scores a lot of goals, as you can see, as he did last time around, even with Callum Wilson back and getting some minutes. Isak still plays 90 minutes. That's the only thing on penalties. Potentially, if Wilson plays on this at the same time, it's probably going to be Wilson taking the penalties. That's one of the downsides with Isak. But I think just the long-term fixtures, the value of Isak, we thought he was undervalued at the start of the season, and now he's in form, basically, or at least he showed last game that he can score and be a really good player. And they have really good fixtures as well. So yeah, I think Isak is just a tremendous pick, and I have made enough money available in the squad for him to be included this time around, which means one of the 3 forwards that I had really high thoughts about last wildcard draft, one of them is going to drop out, and you'll have to see who that is eventually. But Isak, I think currently is my favorite forward just because of the high ceiling that he has. Obviously, the fact that Salah is such an auto-captain makes every pricey asset not as valuable, because they don't really have that captaincy value to their game, because Salah's going to be the captain every single game week. But I still think Isak is worth the money invested, even though he's a bit more expensive than the player that has dropped out. But yeah, Isak's still a fantastic player. He comes in at number 5. Number 6, we have another one of those forwards, and that's going to be João Pedro, who was number 6 pick last time around as well. He still has really good fixtures in the immediate future. He also has long-term really good fixtures for Brighton. He's on penalties, obviously. He's the talisman for that team. He's been tremendous value all season in terms of how much money he costs. Obviously, he was out for a couple game weeks with an injury. And obviously, I say obviously way too much in this video, so I'm going to try to cut down on that. But for now, you just have to bear with me. But anyways, that's a bit of a side point. João Pedro, fantastic player. Not really too much to say about that. He's tremendous value, and yeah, he's going to be someone that you can just stash for the rest of the season, most likely, because yeah, he is completely undervalued this season. So yeah, he comes in at number 6 for that reason. Number 7, we have Morgan Rogers. He's jumped up a bit since last time around because he had a really good game week. He had 1 goal and almost another assist as well. He's looking really good, and the fixtures aren't really the best because I think there's a high chance of him being rested for this next game against Southampton. The game weeks are coming, or the games especially for Aston Villa playing in the Champions League as well. The important games where Rodgers needs to play are coming thick and fast, and we just saw now Chelsea rest a lot of players against Southampton, and I can see Aston Villa doing the same thing, especially with Rodgers, who played 86 minutes. If he had played 90 minutes or like the full game there for Aston Villa, I would have been certain that he would have been rotated for the next game against Southampton. But with 86 minutes, maybe he gets to play, but they also have a pretty important Champions League game after that on Tuesday already. Like, the games are coming really close to one another. So I think there's a good chance that he gets rested against Southampton. And with Southampton out of the way, Nottingham Forest away isn't the best fixture, even though Forest haven't really been as good defensively lately. Man City at home, I mean, it's not the worst for Rodgers as well. City have been kind of struggling defensively, but they did keep a clean sheet this past game week. And then Newcastle away, which is also kind of a tricky fixture, even though they conceded 5 goals now in the last 2 home games, Newcastle. But yeah, the fixtures aren't the best for Rodgers, but he's still going up in terms of my draft pick, because I just have so much faith in him long term. He had another tremendous game this past game week against Brentford. And I think he's just a really, really good valued player. Like I said with João Pedro, I think Rodgers is another player that you can just keep for basically the entire season. He is undervalued. He plays a lot of minutes for Aston Villa, who are a really, really good team, even though they have been through a lot of tough matches now. But I think, especially going into the new year, I think it's going to be really good value at his really low price still. So yeah, Rodgers is just a pretty certain player in my team. I think there's not that many important midfielders that you could choose rather than Rodgers. So yeah, I'm just going to select him there as the number 7 pick for that reason. Just the long-term value is just too good, even though his immediate fixtures aren't the best, especially if he gets rotated against Southampton. So yeah, that's Rodgers at number 7. Right, we have Lewis Hall from Newcastle. Like I said, with Isak, the fixtures are just really, really good for Newcastle, and Hall is playing 90 minutes every single game, taking some set pieces, and he's really attacking. And there's not really too much to be said about that other than that fact. Defensively, they haven't been the best this season, but Botman is on his way to be back and fully fit and play every single game now for Newcastle. I think that's going to help them defensively. And Hall is also someone that can get offensive points as well in any given game week. And if he combines them, clean sheet and an attacking point as well, he's going to get a lot of points, which is going to help him tremendously. So yeah, I think it's just really good value, still really cheap. The fixtures are good. He plays for a top 10 team, at least on paper. And I think his long-term future is pretty damn good for Hall. So yeah, he comes in at number 9 for that reason. Number 8, I should say, because number 9 is Nicholas Jackson. He is also still in the team, which means that Cunha is the one to drop out, which I'm going to talk about towards the end of the video. He had to drop out for Isak. Jackson was the one that I was the closest to not having, because obviously, again, there's that word. He didn't play at all even, didn't come on against Southampton, but that's basically because he got rested because he needs to play in the more important matches coming up, because they still managed to beat Southampton quite easily. But again, Nkunku played rather than Jackson, and he played tremendously, and I think Nkunku should get more minutes just because he's that good of a player. So maybe there's more rotation issues for Jackson in the future. I still don't think so. I still think he's going to play most game coming up, but he's also on 4 yellow cards, so there's a chance of suspension in one of these easier games. I was kind of hoping he would come on and get a yellow card and be suspended for the Spurs game, but even then, like, the Spurs game isn't the worst. Like, he scored a hat-trick against Spurs last season, could do the same again, even though that was against 9 men for most of the match basically. But Jackson is still, regardless, a really good striker who can do really well in any given game week. He's been on fire this season. I think he's one of the best strikers in the Premier League. And for that reason, he's number 9 mostly. But also just the long-term fixtures for Chelsea are really, really good. And I still think Jackson is going to be pretty nailed. But any sign of him being more rotation prone now going forward, there is a case to be made for other strikers, especially Cunha now, who I'm going to get to, has just really good immediate fixtures. But for the long haul, Jackson has the better fixtures, so that's why he's still in the team, even though he's the striker that I'm the most curious about potentially not having in the wildcard draft. And I'm going to have a pretty big decision in game week 16 myself. I have Watkins personally in my team. I'm going to keep him for this game week personally, and then I'm going to sell him for either Isak or Jackson in game week 16. So it's still pretty much up in the air who I prefer out of Isak and Jackson long term, but I think Isak, especially in the immediate fixtures, is really, really good. Even stronger fixtures than Jackson. So yeah, I gotta have to make a decision between those two guys. But for now, if I was on a wildcard, if I had a wildcard this game week, I would select both of them because I think they are both really, really good players to have. So yeah, Jackson comes in at number 9 and is the final forward in my team. Number 10, we have Milos Kerkez. Again, he has been sort of in and out of the wildcard drafts lately because he has been showing some potential. Bournemouth have the best fixtures in the next 5 game weeks. They have the best fixtures overall, and I think Kerkez can get some really nice attacking points and potentially defensive points as well. So short-term fixtures are really good. Long-term, the fixtures aren't as good for Bournemouth after the next 5. But I still think Kerkez is tremendous value. He's still really cheap, really attacking, sort of the same as Hall, plays for a expected top 10 team potentially, who's really attacking, plays 90 minutes every single game, and can get some clean sheets as well on top of that. So yeah, I just feel like I need some Bournemouth representation because they are a really good team with really good fixtures, and they have some really good assets. So yeah, he comes in at number 10 for that reason. I think he's a really solid pick, but there are some potential other players you can have for around the same price. But yeah, I think Kerkez is a really nice player. He could also potentially get a transfer move in January, which is kind of interesting. Imagine if he goes to Liverpool, for example, and starts for Liverpool. Since Robertson is sort of on his way down, that could happen. They have been interested in him in the past, and if that happens, you have a super solid leg up compared to everyone else. He could also potentially be sold to a team abroad, or he could just stay with Bournemouth. But yeah, I think his immediate future as well with Ipswich away now is also really, really good. So I think this is a good jumping on point for Kerkez if you don't have him in your squad already. So yeah, he comes in at number 10. Number 11, we have Andre Onana, who's also new. Kerkez was new. As you can see, he has a green name, and the same goes for Onana, who I mentioned last wildcard draft that he has some tough immediate fixtures, namely Arsenal away this past game week in game 14. That made me not select Onana, but I think long term he's going to be the best goalkeeper to have in FPL, as he has been so far in the first 14 game weeks of the season. He is the highest scoring goalkeeper. And I think Man United are a much better team now than they were at the start of the season, and they have some decent fixtures coming up as well in the immediate future. So yeah, Onana, I think, is the player that I will select in goal. For Bruggen, hasn't really shown much this whole season. Sanchez got rested potentially got dropped this past game week for Chelsea. There's not that many other really good goalkeepers, so I think Onana is just the best pick in goal currently. Man United have been looking a lot better under Amorim. Even against Arsenal, it took 2 corners, set pieces for Arsenal to score against Man United. It didn't manage to score in open play against them, so I think Onana is going to be good value. He's also going to play 90 minutes every single game for Man United, unlike the defenders who we have seen being subbed off at the 55th minute mark, which is awful for FPL in terms of FPL value. So yeah, Onana comes in at number 11. I think the Man United defense is going to be really good for the end of the season. And I think Onana is going to be the safest player to have from that backline. But there are some other potential candidates. I did mention that Kerkez there might be other good cheap defenders, and that's mostly the Man United defenders that I'm thinking about there. Lenny Yoro, for example, if he starts and plays every single game week, he's 4.3. He could be a really good asset in defense instead. But you could also potentially double up on Man United defense. I think they could be that good eventually this season, especially for the value that they are. Onana is 5.2, which is kind of expensive for a goalkeeper, but he's still worth it in my opinion because there aren't that many other good goalkeepers. So yeah, he comes in at number 11. Number 12, we have another Man United player, and that's going to be Amad Diallo. He didn't start this past game against Arsenal for reasons I don't really understand, but yeah, Amorim is doing a lot of changes these last few games. I think he is trying to figure out who's his best players, who's the best player suited for his system and all that stuff. And I think Amad Diallo has proven so far that he is one of the main reasons of optimism in Man United currently, because he is an outstanding talent. We knew that when he came to Man United so many years ago. He's been on loan to Sunderland. He's been trying to prove himself the last few years, but this season I think he's just been absolutely amazing, and I think he's going to keep his place as the wing back for Man United, which is not ideal for a midfielder. You'd rather want him to be further up the pitch than that, but he's also proven the last few game weeks that he can get some attacking returns still playing in that position. And we know from Amorim's time at Sporting that he has 2 wing backs, and one of them is sort of more defensively minded, one of them is more attackingly minded, and it seems like Amad is going to be the latter of the two, who's going to be super offensively inclined basically, and going to be a really good asset. So I think the fixtures, once they get even better eventually, I think the fixtures are actually still pretty good now, because I think Nottingham Forest at home is getting better and better by the week, because Nottingham Forest seem to have sort of lost it a bit defensively. They are conceding a lot of goals now. Maybe fatigue is catching up with them. Maybe they can't do as much offensively. They're struggling more offensively, and that's why they're struggling more defensively as well, Nottingham Forest. But I think that's a decent game week for Amad Diallo. Even against City, he can get some points, because City have been sort of leaky defensively. And then Bournemouth and Wolves are also teams that you can score against. So yeah, I think Amad Diallo is just tremendous value for what it's worth. Sort of the same as Rodgers. He's someone that has burst onto the scene this season, and his value in FPL doesn't reflect that, because the value doesn't get changed properly before the next season starts. So yeah, I think Amad Diallo is basically this season's Garnacho, who was a really nice player to have last season. But now I think Amad is a tremendous valued player, so he comes in at number 12. Number 13, we have Lukasz Fabianski, and again, he's been a mainstay for this team as the backup goalkeeper for the longest time, just because he is the backup goalkeeper the backup FPL goalkeeper for the cheap price that actually plays. And that's still the reason why you have him. You could make a case to start him over Onana in some game weeks, but for the most part, West Ham's defense is just too bad for him to start. But he is a nice fail-safe option, and even in this past game week where I had Sanchez starting, it was nice to at least get 2 points from Fabianski rather than getting 0 points. So yeah, obviously would hope that he played for a better defense, and it doesn't seem like that's going to change in the immediate future for West Ham, but maybe if West Ham get a new manager rather than Lopetegui, maybe they look more defensively sound, and maybe that will keep or make Fabianski an even greater option. So yeah, I quite like that as the backup goalkeeper, and I usually do, because he is the backup goalkeeper that actually plays, the cheap goalkeeper that actually plays. So yeah, he comes in at number 13. But again, as I usually point out in these weekly wildcard draft videos, he's not really that important to the squad either, because basically your backup goalkeeper is someone that you don't really want to play any single game week. You want to play Onana in most game weeks. Maybe when he plays Man City, you want to play Fabianski instead, but for the most part, you want to play Onana, and then the backup goalkeeper doesn't matter as much. So yeah, Fabianski at number 13. Number 14, we have Jurrien Timber, and he is actually, in terms of being a really good player who has really high value, he should be higher in this list, higher than 14, but there's just so many defenders currently at a pretty expensive price that I'm considering. So you have to just choose one of them, because I think you also want to have Salah, Palmer, Saka. I think Isak, because he's in the team now, I had to drop someone that I really didn't want to drop in defense, who I'm going to talk about. There's just so many good, sort of, at least this past game week, it was a lot of good performances from the more expensive defenders. So you just have to choose someone, and that's why Timber has been selected like lower than he should be for his value, because I think he is going to get a lot more points than Hall and Kerkez, for example, for the next few game weeks. But there's just you just have to choose someone who's like with the money available. Starting to stumble on my words now, but yeah, there is another expensive defender spot that we have in this team, and I think Timber is currently who I'm leaning towards, because yeah, he is a bit more expensive, but he is also still the cheaper out of the other players that I'm going to mention, or could just mention them now. Yusko Gordel, who got a clean sheet and had several good chances to score for Man City. He's been fantastic in terms of scoring goals, and Man City are looking to get a lot of clean sheets going forward. He's a really strong consideration. And then Trent Alexander-Arnold as well. Didn't start this past game week, but then came on and had 2 assists, so he looks really, really good as well. But Timber is he's cheaper than both of those guys, so for that reason I'm picking him ahead of them. He's still a tremendous pick, obviously. If he's the one that makes sense for your team in terms of the money that you have available. If you have just enough for Timber but you don't have enough for Guardiola or Trent, it's really easy to choose Timber. But on a wildcard where you can choose and select the whole squad, basically, I could potentially be convinced to make the Timber spot into Trent and then downgrade Jackson to Cunha, for example, to make way and have the money in the bank for Trent. Because with unlimited funds, I would probably go with Trent, Guardiola, and then Timber in that order. But since we don't have unlimited funds, it's going to be Timber at number 1 out of those 3 players and number 14 in this draft. So yeah, good value. There are just a lot of other good value defenders that I could go with instead of him. So that's why he's number 14, which is also kind of a correction from last time around when I had Trent as the number 7 pick, even though he was sort of like on the outskirts of the squad, because you can use that money for someone else, basically. So yeah, that's Timber at number 14, convoluted, but I still got through in the end. Number 15 is going to be Joachim Andersen once again. I know he is injured. I probably should have mentioned that last time around. I wasn't fully informed about that, but he's also not going to be injured for too long either. The fixtures obviously aren't the best. Arsenal, Liverpool, then Southampton always, which is a nice fixture, and then Chelsea away. Like 3 out of the next 4 are terrible fixtures, but he's 4.3, soon to be 4.2, I think, in terms of value. Long term, his fixtures are going to be really good, and he's just going to be on your bench in most of the next game weeks anyway. So yeah, I think it's just the best valued, like, cheap defender long term. So that's why he's still in the squad. But if you want to go with someone like Greaves, for example, for 4.0, who starts now for Ipswich, I could make a case for that as well. But yeah, we have just enough money in the bank to have him as the final defender instead. So he comes in at number 15. So that's all the players this time around. Talked for quite an extensive amount of time in this video, so I'm going to try to be a bit more quick when it comes to the dropped players and the players that are on the cusp. But first, let's talk about the 4 players that have dropped out since last time, because as you can see, Onana, Kerkez, Timber, and Isak are new since last time, so that means 4 players have dropped out. So let's talk about those players, even though I have talked a bit about them already in this video. So first and foremost, Trent Alexander-Arnold, TAA, as it says there on the screen. He was the number 7 pick last time around, and it should have been lower down on the totem pole, because I think in terms of FPL value, if he had unlimited funds, he would be like potentially even higher on the list. But when you have to take funds into consideration, he drops down in the rankings, and he should have been like closer to where the other players were last game week, like the lower ranked players. So yeah, he's still a tremendous pick though. Came on and got 2 assists. He didn't get the clean sheet points since he didn't play from start of the game. But he just showed his attacking promise, which was why I was so high on him at the start of the season. But back then he only got 1 assist. But now he doubled his or tripled his assists, I guess, in 1 game week from a game where he didn't even start. But at the same time, so that probably sounds like a contradiction. I had him as number 7 pick last time around. He came on now and had 2 assists, and he's going to start because he got rested. It seems like his value should be higher than last time around, but at the same time, with Trent, I don't think he's going to keep up that level of assisting either, because I think it was mainly because Liverpool were chasing a goal. He was allowed to go way more attacking than he usually does, and he got 2 assists from that. But he's still a really, really good pick who I'm really annoyed that I can't have in the squad, but sacrifices has to be made to bring Isak in rather than Cunha. So I guess I worked out that Timber and Isak is better than Trent and Cunha, but it is pretty much 50-50 that thing. It's tough to choose, but or Jackson for that matter. Jackson's probably the one I would drop because he's about the same price as Isak, and I think Isak is currently someone that I would favor on rather than Jackson. So yeah, Jackson and Timber rather than Cunha and Trent, but it's pretty close. But speaking of Cunha, he's the number 8 pick last time around. He's also dropped out because of 2 pretty bad performances in a row now. Wolves are sort of struggling. Maybe they are getting towards the end of Gary O'Neill's reign as manager. That could be the case. Cunha was also overperforming his numbers before his recent struggles, and I think that could be taken into consideration. But they have 3 really good fixtures now coming up, Wolves, where you really want to have Cunha. I don't think if you have Cunha currently in your own team, you don't have a wildcard, you're just doing single transfers. I wouldn't do Cunha to Isak or Jackson just because of the next 3 game weeks. But on a wildcard where you have to think more long term, and you also can use that money or like swap the money around to make the rest of your team better, I think it makes sense for Cunha to drop out, even though he has really, really good fixtures and it's tough to drop him. And the same goes for Aït-Nouri. Really good immediate fixtures for Aït-Nouri, but at the same time, Wolves, can we really trust them to beat any team at this point? Losing 4-0 to Everton, of all teams. Yeah, I don't really have enough trust in Wolves as a team to have their players anymore, even though they are really cheap, really good value, have really good fixtures for the next 3. After that, as we know, the Wolves fixtures just plummet and go into the toilet for a little while. So yeah, long-term wise, I don't think Cunha and Aït-Nouri are the best, but short-term wise, I wouldn't sell them either for the next 3 game weeks. I would still keep them through those really good games and save the transfers for a brighter day, I guess. Sell them eventually. So yeah, on a wildcard, I would drop them both. If I had them in my team, which I currently do with my own team, I'm going to keep them until their fixtures start to get worse. But yeah, they've both dropped out. And then for Bruggen, just hasn't really been the best this whole season. I thought Brighton were going to turn it on, and maybe they do. Maybe they keep a clean sheet, because I'm recording this before their game against Fulham this game week on the Thursday. So maybe he'll get a clean sheet. Maybe he'll look really, really good. But I think Onana, like I said last week, it's only a matter of time before he comes in, because I think Man United's fixtures are just that good. So I think Onana is just a better pick currently than Verbruggen. So that's why Verbruggen has been dropped. But he's still a really cheap goalkeeper. And again, with goalkeepers especially, you don't have to do any transfers. I think if you have Verbruggen, you should be perfectly fine with keeping him. But if I was on a wildcard, I'd select Onana instead. So that's why Verbruggen has dropped out. And then finally, 3 players on the cusp that I need to talk about that have that were close-ish to make the squad but didn't. And 3 players that are also not part of the dropped players, because I don't want to duplicate with the same player, basically. So yeah, 3 players. Josko Guardiola, I already mentioned him. He was really close to making it rather than Timber, especially with the price not being that much of a difference. You could make the case of Guardiola over Timber, but at the same time, Arsenal are just a team that I trust a lot more defensively. Timber, as we know, is going to play for the foreseeable future with Ben White injured. He also is really attacking. He scored a goal this past game. He got 14 points. He can get goals and assists from open play. He can goals and assists from set pieces, as we saw now. So yeah, I think Timber is just all around a better player than Guardiola, but I think Guardiola has more goal threat and less clean sheet threat or clean sheet potential than Timber. But I think clean sheet potential is more important this season, because it makes more sense for bonus points. Like, there's a better chance of getting a bonus points for Timber if he keeps a clean sheet than if Guardiola keeps a clean sheet. And also Guardiola, we saw him keep a clean sheet this time around, but City scored 3 goals and he didn't get any bonus points anyway, because they have a lot of good attacking talents. And I think Timber has a better chance of getting bonus points, because he could also, first and foremost, he can get some goals on top of that, but also because Arsenal don't score quite as many goals as City. But it's pretty close, that thing as well, because we know Arsenal are really good attacking wise. But yeah, Guardiola is really close. De Bruyne as well, I think I should just mention him. Maybe if you want to be differential, you can go with De Bruyne rather than Saka, because De Bruyne looked really, really good, back to his best this past game week, got a goal and an assist. So he is a decent value player, but I still think his price is just a bit too much for me to go with him rather than someone like Saka, for example. I still like Saka really, really nicely long term. Saka also obviously takes penalties. And I don't think like Salah, Palmer, Saka, I don't think any of them will be dropped at any point. But you could also drop a striker, I guess, and go really cheap, go with a cheaper defender, cheaper striker, and then make De Bruyne one of your players. You could do that and have like 4 really, really strong midfielders, but currently I just don't think there's enough value in that for De Bruyne to be in the squad, basically. But he's someone that is worth mentoring, or monitoring is the word I'm looking for, and mentioning for that matter in this video, because yeah, he showed some promise this past game week, and he is really, really good, as we know from the past few seasons. Then finally, Anton Semenyo as well. Should just mention him. I think Bournemouth's attacking fixtures are still really, really good, as you can see from the Kerkez fixtures there. Ipswich away could be really nice. Maybe Semenyo or Evanilson makes me reconsider after the game now on Thursday. But for now, I'm not gonna have enough room in the team for Semenyo. I could drop Amad Diallo and have Semenyo instead, but then I would also have to find some more money. And like I said, I really want. I don't have enough money to get the players that I actually want the most. So yeah, money is scarce, and that's why you can't really do Semenyo rather than Amad, even though I think Semenyo is going to get more points in the next few game weeks. So yeah, that's basically it for the on the cusp players as well, and that's basically it for the video. 35 minutes basically of content, FPL content for you. Still going to make the team selection video as well for next upcoming game week. And then finally, we're going to get a bit of a rest before we get the next game week in FPL, because there's a lot of game weeks coming up now, and there's a lot of content to make. And my words might be a bit jumbled and scrumbled and all those words that don't make sense. And I might be ranting towards the end of the video like I usually do. But I hope you enjoyed the content nonetheless, and you like this sort of off-the-cuff, unedited type of FPL content that I provide to you. But if you do that, then please subscribe to the channel. If you've gone through this 36-minute ramble at this point, then please subscribe. Getting closer and closer to 1,000 subscribers, which would be really, really nice. Also going to get closer and closer to top 10k, hopefully, in my rank, because as you can see, I haven't mentioned that all video. My current rank is going up, because I did have a pretty good game week with the Aston Villa assets of Rodgers and Watkins especially helping me, and Mikolenko off the bench with 11 points. Fantastic. I'm going to talk more about that in the team selection video coming out tomorrow. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoy the content that I make. And with all that said, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.